Yeah, you want to know if restoring a BMW is profitable. Well, in this very garage, I have just finished restoring this 1995 V8 5-speed manual 530i E34 model, restored from top to bottom. Now, for those of you who have been following along on the series, welcome back. I'm going to break down the full cost of the entire build and what I just sold it for. For those of you who are new here, click on that link and check out more about the build of this car. Now, before we begin, a couple of ground rules. Rule number one, I am not an actual mechanic. I just pretend to be one on the internet. So my level of experience through this project was a learning curve, all right? So that's the first thing to remember. Number two, I did not include the cost of tools and materials and my own labor in this build. I'm assuming that if you're gonna jump down the rabbit hole of trying to restore your own car, you've got some tools, you've got a space where you can restore a car, etc., etc. All those costs are not included here. It's just the stuff I paid for, the cost for parts, and anything that I outsourced. Right, now that we got that out of the way, this car 2 years ago was $5,500 Canadian plus $1,500 to get it shipped here from 3,000 kilometers away. What are we looking at in terms of US dollars? I don't know, 3,500, give or take, for the car. Now I've broken it out into different sections. First thing we're going to talk about is the exterior. So here's the laundry list of all the expenses. Obviously the paint job being the most expensive one. Now I will admit this price of 3,500 Canadian was quite competitive and quite cheap, I think, in this market. I've been quoted a lot more by a lot of different people, so definitely some big savings there. The second piece that saved me, I think, a ton of money, and anybody who's watched the videos will probably attest to it, is repainting all of the black trim, and this car has a ton of black plastic trim around it. Me doing all that work myself, that saved a ton of money. I also stripped and reassembled the car by myself, and that was massive amounts of work. So grand total, just over $5,500 Canadian on the exterior. On the interior, this is probably where I saw the biggest bang for my buck. This interior was just completely disgusting. The seats were brown and black. They weren't this kind of nice ivory, silver gray color. I changed a couple of trim pieces here, the shifter and this main kind of panel down here. But otherwise, I just did a lot of cleaning, a lot of steaming, re-dyeing of leather, and correcting and fixing things. And the interior just looks immaculate now. It is genuinely 9.5 out of 10. All that, minus my labor and time, obviously, $580 Canadian. Massive transformation. The last piece is the mechanical. Now, that is a giant laundry list. The biggest thing, actually, that helped me with selling this car and for the new buyer was the fact that this entire build was documented. So instead of me just showing up with a bunch of receipts, the buyers can view the entire history of what was done and how it was done, because it's all there in video evidence form. There's a couple things on here that anybody who has been following along this build from the beginning might not recognize. There is a third O2 sensor on there. I was still getting a check engine light a couple of days ago because of some vacuum leaks and extra fuel going into the exhaust. I think it gummed up one of the O2 sensors, so I fixed that. And I ended up having a hot no crank issue, and that ended up being the starter and the starter solenoid within the starter. When the engine was really hot, now that it's like 25, 30 degrees Celsius outside, the starter would get heat soak, and if you tried cranking it, nothing would happen. No clicks, not even a turn of the starter or the engine, just nothing. I ended up diagnosing it at a local garage where we cooled down the starter and it cranked right up. And that was usually what would happen for me. I'd wait 20 or 30 minutes and the car would fire up. So I did all that off camera. I replaced the starter and now the car is perfect. So grand total, mechanicals, just under $3,500 Canadian. So when all is said and done, I am into this car just shy of $17,500 Canadian, which is roughly in the low end of the teens US dollar wise, I think around $13,000 US. That is how much I have put into this car. And the final sale price, $20,000 Canadian, or about $15,000 US. Now that puts my pure profit margin just around $2,500 Canadian. Frankly, I didn't know what this car was going to sell for. E34s that are non-rusty and that are restored are extremely rare and hard to come by, especially ones that have been repainted, that look, 10 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 inside, outside, mechanically, completely original, 100% stock, unmolested. I just couldn't find any comparables, so it was a very difficult car to judge what's the correct list price and what's the correct sale price. In the end, I'm happy with what I got. I'm also happy that it's going to the right home, the right buyer. In terms of hours that I have into this project, I mean, check it out for yourself. There's a playlist. I'll put a link over here to it. There's over 15 videos of me doing work on this car at roughly 10 to 15 hours per video. That is 150 to 200 hours of my labor at the very minimum that has gone into this car. So at that rate, I am basically paying myself $5 to $10 an hour, which obviously doesn't make sense and isn't worth it. Have I enjoyed this project? Absolutely. What I'm most happy with, though, is the final product of what this car came out to look like and the reception that it got once I listed it for sale. I mean, the people who I talked to, the gentleman who ended up buying the car, were just blown away by how the car looks and feels and drives. To me, that's the ultimate satisfaction, not necessarily how much money you made or didn't make. And frankly, anything above break even is just gravy. I'm just happy that it's going to the right home. Now, by the time you watch this video, this car will be long gone out of the dead-end garage and delivered to its happy new owner. I want to thank you all for watching. This was such a learning experience and I loved every minute of it. And frankly, it's just whet my appetite to do more builds and get into even more crazy stuff, like the E90 M3, which is coming up very soon. I know you guys have been dying to see content on that car. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, throw them down at the bottom. I'd love to hear from you. And also check out this build series if you're new to the channel. As always, I'll see you next time. Ciao.